John Carter paced nervously in the pristine delivery room of the royal clinic on the distant planet Althea, ruled for centuries by proud queens. He was about to become a father. His son would be named Raymond, after his grandfather, the man who made everything possible. Without Raymond, John wouldn't have won his wife's heart, become king of Althea, or freed the planet's men from their unjust treatment. No one thought a human could achieve so much. John's memories pulled him back to his 15th year, to the bustling halls of an interstellar exchange program on the orbital station Nexus 7. The air hummed with the chatter of a dozen species, their voices mingling with the soft whir of translator drones. At 15, John Carter was a bundle of hormones and bravado, his earthborn confidence clashing with the station's alien grandeur. Then he saw her, Princess Seraphina of Aurellia, gliding through the crowd like a flame through twilight. Her orange skin glowed like a desert sunrise, catching the station's artificial starlight. Her golden eyes burned with molten intensity, each glance a spark that could ignite or incinerate. Her black hair, sleek as liquid night, cascaded over her shoulders, shimmering with every step. Her metallic gown clung to her form, its iridescent threads shifting like a living flame. She was breathtaking, a vision of regal power and otherworldly allure. John's heart thudded, his teenage brain short-circuiting with a mix of awe and reckless desire. He wove through the crowd, dodging a pair of tentacled diplomats and a hovering Martian scholar, his sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Seraphina stood by a viewport, gazing at the nebula beyond, her silhouette framed against swirling purples and blues. John swallowed hard, his palms sweaty, and summoned every ounce of courage. "Hey, you're the most stunning alien I've ever seen," he blurted, his voice cracking slightly. The words tumbled out before he could stop them, raw and unfiltered. Seraphina turned, her golden eyes locking onto him with predatory precision. She tilted her head, one perfectly arched brow rising like a crescent moon. "Alien," she repeated, her voice smooth as velvet but edged with amusement. "To me, you are the alien, human boy." Her gaze swept over him, his scuffed sneakers, his faded earthband tee, his messy brown hair, and her lips curved into a smirk. "And yet you dare approach me?" John's cheeks flushed, but he pressed on, fueled by a cocktail of adrenaline and youthful stupidity. "Yeah, I do," he said, stepping closer, his voice steadier now. "I'm John Carter, and I think you're, well, amazing. Want to go on a date? Grab some nutrient gel, watch the nebula spin." He flashed a grin, hoping it masked his pounding heart. The crowd around them quieted, alien eyes and sensors turning to watch. Seraphina's laugh erupted, sharp and bright, like embers popping in a fire. "The date," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "Humans are so quaint, so predictable." She leaned in slightly, her scent, a mix of spice and starlight, teasing his senses. "Do you even know who I am, John Carter? I am Seraphina, heir to Aurelia's throne. I do not date Earth boys with foolish grins." The words stung, each one a precise cut to his pride. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some amused, others pitying. John's face burned, but something in her eyes, a fleeting glint of curiosity, maybe even intrigue, kept him from retreating. "Maybe you don't," he shot back, his voice low but firm, "but you've never met a human like me. I see you, Seraphina. Not just the crown, not just the glow. I see the galaxy in your heart, the fire that could light up 1,000 stars." Her smirk faltered just for a heartbeat. His words, raw and earnest, seemed to pierce her regal armor. She straightened, her gaze narrowing. "Bold words for a child," she said, but her tone softened, almost imperceptibly. "You think you see me? You see nothing but your own delusions." She turned to leave, her gown trailing like a comet's tail, but John wasn't done. "Princess of Star Eyes," he called, loud enough for the hall to hear. "Mark my words. One day you'll ask me to marry you." His voice echoed, defiant and unshaken. Seraphina paused mid-step, her shoulders tensing. The crowd gasped, a few aliens' stifling laughs. For a moment, John thought she might turn back, might say something, anything. But she didn't. She glided away, her laughter trailing like a fading spark, leaving him in the spotlight of 100 alien stares. Humiliation clawed at him, his chest tight with the weight of rejection. Yet beneath it, a fire kindled, defiance, resolve, and a strange certainty that his words had struck deeper than she'd admit. He stood there, fists clenched, watching her vanish into the crowd. John Carter, the brash Earth boy, had just thrown down a gauntlet to a queen, and he'd spend years making sure she'd pick it up. John trudged home to the family's old farmhouse on the edge of New Terra's grasslands, his pride as bruised as a fallen apple. The sting of Seraphina's rejection burned in his chest, her mocking laugh echoing in his ears. At 15, he felt the weight of failure heavier than the station's artificial gravity. The porch light glowed warmly as he climbed the creaky steps, the scent of cedar and engine grease welcoming him to the one place he could bare his soul, his grandfather's side. Raymond Carter sat in his weathered rocking chair, a mug of synth coffee steaming in his calloused hands. His silver hair caught the porch light, and his deep-set eyes, creased with years of laughter and loss, seemed to hold the secrets of distant stars. He was a man who listened more than he spoke, his silence an invitation to unburden. John slumped into the chair beside him, kicking at a loose board. "I'm messed up, Grandpa," he muttered, staring at the fireflies blinking over the fields. "I tried to ask out this Aurelian princess, Seraphina. She laughed in my face, called me predictable." Raymond took a slow sip, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the twin moons hung low. "Predictable, huh?" he said, his voice low and gravelly, tinged with amusement. "Sounds like she saw right through you, Johnny. But tell me, what did you say to her?" John recounted the encounter, his words tumbling out. The clumsy compliment, the bold date request, the desperate vow about marriage. By the end, his cheeks were hot again, but Raymond just chuckled, a warm sound like a campfire crackling. "Boy, you swung for the stars and missed," Raymond said, leaning back. "But that fire in you, that's something. Aurelian women like her. They're a breed apart. Intense, proud, hearts like a nebula. Beautiful, but you'll get lost if you charge and blind." He set his mug down, his eyes glinting with memory. "Remind me of your grandma, Ellie. Took me 3 years to get her to smile at me, another 2 to hold her hand. Her heart was a puzzle, and I was a fool with no map." John leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the sting of rejection giving way to curiosity. "How'd you do it, then? How'd you win her over?" Raymond's smile softened, his gaze drifting to the stars. "Aurelians, like Ellie, don't fall for grand gestures or sweet talk. They crave challenge, mystery, someone who's a riddle they can't solve. You offered yourself on a platter, Johnny. No wonder she laughed." He stood, motioning John to follow him to the edge of the porch, where the night breeze carried the scent of wildflowers. "Look out there," Raymond said, pointing to the moons. "See how they don't chase each other? They just are, and the light finds its way. That's your first lesson. Don't chase. Be someone worth finding." John frowned, confused, but Raymond clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You're young, so we'll start slow. Patience, strategy, and a bit of humor. That's the key to an Aurelian's heart." Thus began John's education, a daily ritual under the fading light of New Terra's suns. Every afternoon, after school, John joined Raymond on the porch, the old man weaving lessons into stories. One evening, as crickets chirped, Raymond handed John a glass of water and said, "Let's talk about listening. Aurelians don't just hear words, they feel silences. You gotta learn to say more by saying less." He told a tale of a smuggler who won a warlord's trust by staying quiet during a tense standoff, letting the warlord's own words betray his fears. Another day, under a sky streaked with meteor showers, Raymond taught John about presence. "You don't need to shout to be seen," he said, tossing a pebble into the grass. "That pebble's small, but it ripples. Cultivate a quiet strength, Johnny. Aurelians despise weakness. but they're drawn to confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. He shared how Ellie once ignored him for weeks until he stopped trying to impress her and simply fixed her broken hoverbike, letting his actions speak. Humor came next, Raymond's favorite weapon. A good laugh disarms, he said one twilight, his eyes twinkling. Your grandma couldn't resist my bad jokes. Find a way to make Seraphina smile? Not at you, but with you. He recounted how he'd once teased Ellie about her terrible cooking, earning a laugh that broke the ice between them. John grinned, imagining Seraphina's sharp laugh softening into something warmer. Through these afternoons, John soaked up Aurelian psychology like a sponge. Raymond explained their aversion to overt neediness, their secret admiration for independence and wit. Never beg for her attention, he warned, his voice firm. Show her you're a star in your own right, and she'll orbit closer to see why you shine. John practiced, honing his words, mastering his impulses, learning to carry himself with a magnetic ease that invited curiosity without demanding it. One night, as they watched a comet streak across the sky, John asked, You think I've got a shot, Grandpa? With her. Raymond looked at him, his face etched with pride. You've got more than a shot, Johnny. You've got a spark. But it's going to take time. You're not just wooing a princess. You're rewriting what she thinks a human can be. He squeezed John's shoulder. Keep learning. That vow you made? It's a seed. Water it with patience, and it'll grow. By the end of that summer, John was no longer the brash boy who'd stumbled over his words on Nexus 7. He was still young, still rough around the edges, but Raymond's wisdom had kindled something new, a quiet fire, a belief that he could become the man worthy of a queen's heart. Seraphina's laugh no longer haunted him. It fueled him. He'd see her again, and when he did, he'd be ready. The summers with Raymond had carved John Carter into a new man, his brash edges smoothed by lessons of patience and wit, though the fire of his youth still flickered beneath a calmer surface. Now 22, he stood taller, his eyes sharper, carrying the quiet confidence his grandfather had nurtured. The promise he'd made to Princess Seraphina on Nexus 7, a reckless vow that she'd one day propose, burned brighter than ever, a star guiding him across the galaxy. He'd decided it was time to go to Aurellia, her homeworld, to face the queen he'd sworn to win. John stepped into the bustling spaceport of New Terra, a chaotic hub of neon signs, humming drones, and travelers from 100 worlds. The air buzzed with the clatter of luggage bots and the chatter of interstellar comms. At the ticket counter, a grizzled seller with a cybernetic eye and a wad of synthetic gum sized him up. Aurellia, the man rasped, spitting into a hovering disposal unit. That's no place for men. They've got ways of keeping fellas in line. You sure about this? John leaned on the counter, his smile easy but resolute, a far cry from the flustered teen who'd faced Seraphina's scorn. I'm sure, he said, sliding his credit chip across. I've got a promise to keep. Besides, I'm just a tourist. They don't mess with tourists, right? The seller snorted, his cyber eye whirring as it scanned John's chip. Tourist or not, you're walking into a lion's den. Could be your funeral, or hell, maybe your wedding. With those Aurelians, it's a coin toss. He handed John the ticket, a glint of curiosity in his weathered face. Good luck, kid. You'll need it. The interstellar shuttle to Aurellia was a rattling beast, its hull groaning as it punched through the turbulent gravitational fields of the Orion Nebula. John sat by a flickering viewport, the nebula's swirling purples and golds casting shadows across his face. Across from him, a merchant from Andromeda, his scales glinting under the cabin's dim lights, sipped a fizzing drink and eyed John with interest. Aurellia, the merchant said, his voice a low hum through his translator. Not many humans head that way. Business or pleasure? John grinned, popping open a packet of nutrient paste, strawberry-flavored, a small comfort on the bumpy ride. Neither exactly. I'm going to see the queen. The merchant's scales rippled, a sign of surprise. Queen Seraphina? You know royal, not with that shirt and that paste. What a human like you want with her? He leaned closer, his four eyes narrowing. You got a death wish? Or are you just crazy? Crazy's closer, John said, his tone light, but his eyes steady. Let's just say I made a promise a long time ago, and I'm not the type to break my word. I've got a hunch I can get an audience with her. The merchant let out a rasping laugh, slapping his clawed hand on the armrest. An audience? With Seraphina? You got guts, I'll give you that. Last human who tried to charm an Aurelian noble ended up cleaning plasma conduits for a decade. He tilted his head, studying John. What's your angle, kid? You don't look like a fool, but you talk like one. John took a bite of the paste, chewing thoughtfully. No angle, he said. Just a feeling. I think I know how to talk to her. How to make her listen. He leaned back, his voice softening. She's not just a queen. She's someone who deserves to be seen, not just worshipped. The merchant stared, then shook his head, a grudging respect in his eyes. You're either a genius or a goner. Tell you what, if you pull this off, I'll buy you a real meal, not that paste crap. Name's Krez. Look me up if you survive. The shuttle lurched, a wave of turbulence rattling the cabin. John gripped his seat, his mind racing not with fear, but with anticipation. Raymond's lessons echoed in his head. Observe. Listen, be worth finding. He wasn't the boy who'd shouted bold promises in a crowded hall. He was a man now, armed with wit, patience, and a spark of something even Seraphina couldn't ignore. Aurellia loomed closer, its violet skies calling him to a destiny he'd forged with his own hands. John Carter stepped onto the soil of Aurellia, his boots sinking slightly into the luminescent moss that carpeted the landing platform. The planet was a vision of splendor, cities of translucent steel and crystal soared into violet skies, their spires catching the light of twin suns like prisms. Jungles of glowing vines pulsed in the distance, their bioluminescence weaving a tapestry of life. At the heart of it all floated the Sky Citadel, a fortress of molten metal and glass suspended among neon clouds, the seat of Queen Seraphina's power. John's pulse quickened, not with fear but with the thrill of a promise kept. He approached the citadel's gates, a towering archway carved with swirling glyphs that shimmered like liquid fire. A squad of Aurelian guards, their orange skin gleaming under ceremonial armor, barred his path, their golden eyes narrowing at the sight of a human. John stood tall, his earth-made jacket a stark contrast to their opulence. I request an audience with Queen Seraphina, he said, his voice steady, carrying the quiet confidence Raymond had instilled. The guards exchanged glances, then burst into laughter, their voices like chiming bells. A human seeks the queen? One scoffed, his spear glinting. Go back to your dirt world, boy. John didn't flinch. Tell her John Carter is here, he said, his gaze unwavering. She'll want to see me. The guard's amusement faltered at his audacity, but before they could retort, an older guard, his face etched with scars and his armor dulled by years, stepped forward. Carter, he rasped, his eyes widening. You related to Raymond Carter? The human who fought with us in Orion's clash. John nodded. My grandfather. The old guard's expression softened, a rare warmth breaking through his stoic facade. Raymond saved my squad when the Zorax breached our lines. I owe him my life. He turned to the others, his voice sharp. Get this man's request to the queen. Now, the younger guards hesitated, but the elder's glare silenced them. Move, or I'll have you scrubbing conduits. John handed over a data slate with his formal request, including a message he'd crafted with care. Grant an audience to one who sees the galaxy in your heart. It was a deliberate echo of his boyish vow, a spark to reignite a memory. The guard sent the slate through a glowing uplink, expecting rejection. To their shock, a response pinged back almost instantly. Approved. Escort the human to the throne room. The younger guards gaped, but the elder clapped John on the shoulder. You've got your grandfather's guts, kid. Don't waste this. The throne room was a cathedral of light and shadow, its vaulted ceiling lost in a haze of holographic stars. Pillars of liquid metal pulsed with energy, casting rippling reflections across the obsidian floor. At the far end, Seraphina sat on a throne that seemed forged from a single, molten star, its edges shimmering with heat. She was no longer the haughty princess of Nexus 7. Her orange skin glowed like a supernova, her golden eyes burned with regal intensity, and her black hair flowed like a cosmic river, framed by a crown of flickering plasma. Her gown, a cascade of iridescent threads, clung to her form, each movement a ripple of fire and shadow. She was a queen, commanding and untouchable, yet John saw the woman beneath, the one he'd sworn to reach. He strode forward, the guards trailing warily, his steps echoing in the vast chamber. Seraphina's gaze locked onto him, sharp and unyielding, as if dissecting his very soul. "Human," she said, her voice a melody of authority and velvet, "you dare to stand before me. Speak. Why have you come to my court?" The words carried a challenge, but John caught a flicker in her eyes, a spark of recognition, perhaps stirred by his message. He bowed slightly, just enough to show respect without deference, his lips curving into a faint, knowing smile. "Your Majesty, I'm John Carter. I've come to remind you of a promise made years ago on a station far from here." Her brow arched, a gesture so familiar it tugged at his memory of that teenage encounter. "A promise?" she repeated, her tone cool but laced with curiosity. "Refresh my memory, John Carter. What could a human boy have promised a queen?" John stepped closer, his voice low but clear, carrying the weight of years spent preparing for this moment. "I was 15, reckless, and probably a little stupid," he said, a self-deprecating chuckle softening his words. "I told you I saw the galaxy in your heart. I said one day, you'd ask me to marry you." A murmur rippled through the guards, quickly silenced by Seraphina's raised hand. Her eyes narrowed, but a fleeting smile, barely there, like a star winking out, touched her lips. "Bold words," she said. "Arrogant, even. Yet you stand here, no longer a boy. Why should I entertain such a childish boast?" John met her gaze, unflinching, his voice steady but warm. "Because it wasn't just a boast, Your Majesty. It was a vow, and I've spent every day since making myself worthy of it. You don't remember the words, but you felt them on Nexus 7 when you paused when my voice reached you. I'm here to see if that spark still burns." Her expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened on the throne's armrest, a subtle sign that his words had struck a chord. She leaned forward, her golden eyes glinting with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. "You presume much, human," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, each word a test. "You think you see me? Many have tried. All have failed. What makes you different?" John's smile widened, not cocky but assured, a reflection of Raymond's lessons. "I don't just see the queen," he said. "I see the woman who paused at a boy's words, who carries a galaxy not just in her heart but in her dreams. I'm here to find out if she's curious enough to see me too." The air in the throne room thickened, the guards holding their breath. Seraphina studied him, her gaze a crucible that could forge or destroy. Then, slowly, she leaned back, her fleeting smile returning, sharper now, like a blade catching light. "You are unexpected, John Carter," she said, her voice tinged with something new. Amusement, perhaps, or the faintest hint of respect. "Very well. Speak. Let's see if your words hold more than bravado." In the vast throne room of Aurelia's sky citadel, John Carter stood before Queen Seraphina, her golden eyes pinning him like a star in a telescope's crosshairs. The air thrummed with the soft pulse of the liquid metal pillars, their reflections dancing across her orange skin, which glowed like a desert flame. Her throne, a molten star, cast flickering shadows, and her iridescent gown shifted with every breath, a cascade of fire and starlight. The guards stood rigid, their spears glinting, as the silence stretched taut, a string waiting to snap. John, guided by Raymond's wisdom, began his dance of words, knowing each syllable could forge a bond or break his chance. He didn't bow or fawn, nor did he plead for her favor. Instead, he leaned slightly against a pillar, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp, a spark of mischief in them. "You asked what makes me different, Your Majesty," he said, his voice warm but edged with confidence. "I've seen a few corners of the galaxy, smuggler dens in Andromeda, ice temples on Glassera. Tell me one thing. Power isn't just crowns or armies. It's knowing who you are when the stars go dark." His words hung in the air, a subtle challenge wrapped in a storyteller's charm. Seraphina's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close, her fingers tracing the armrest of her throne. "A philosopher, are you?" she said, her voice a velvet blade, testing him. "And what, pray tell, do you know of my stars, human?" Her tone was regal, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of intrigue, as if daring him to surprise her. John grinned, a boyish flash that echoed the teen she'd met years ago, but tempered now with a man's poise. "Not enough, I'll admit," he said, "but I'd wager your stars burn brighter than most. Problem is, everyone's too busy bowing to see the fire behind them." A guard stifled a gasp, but Seraphina's laugh broke the tension, a sound like crystal chimes, genuine and unguarded, startling even her own retinue. "You are bold to the point of foolishness," she said, leaning forward, her gown shimmering like a comet's tail. "Yet you amuse me. Tell me, John Carter, what fuels this fire you claim to see?" Her question was a gauntlet, her golden eyes narrowing, searching for weakness. John straightened, his voice softening but steady. "Dreams," he said. "Mine took me from a dusty farm on New Terra to the edge of the nebula. They taught me to listen to the galaxy, and to people who think they're too grand to be heard." Her brow arched, a perfect crescent, but her smile lingered, sharper now, like a blade catching starlight. "You think I need to be heard?" she asked, her tone teasing but laced with a challenge. "I am a queen. My voice commands worlds." John stepped closer, just a step, his eyes locked on hers, a quiet intensity in them. "Sure, but who listens to Seraphina, not the crown? Who sees the woman who paused when a kid shouted she'd marry him?" The room stilled, the guard's spears twitching, but Seraphina's gaze held, her breath catching for a fraction of a second, a memory stirring in those fiery depths. She rose from her throne, descending a single step, her gown trailing like molten glass. "You speak of that boy," she said, her voice lower, almost intimate, though still laced with regal control. "A child's bravado. Why should it matter now?" John didn't back away, his smile soft but unyielding. "Because that boy grew up, Your Majesty. He learned that real strength isn't shouting. It's making someone like you wonder what's behind a human smile." Her eyes widened slightly, a spark of curiosity igniting, and for a moment, the queen seemed less untouchable, more a woman intrigued by a puzzle she couldn't yet solve. The conversation shifted, John weaving tales of his travels, a near miss with a pirate fleet, a night lost in a sentient forest, each story laced with humor and insight, never boasting but always revealing a mind that saw the galaxy's chaos and found meaning in it. Seraphina listened, her regal mask slipping as she laughed again, a sound that warmed the cold obsidian floor. "You are not what I expected," she admitted, her voice softer, her fingers brushing a lock of her black hair. "Tell me, human, what drives your kind to chase such fleeting things as connection?" John seized the opening, his voice steady but rich with feeling. "We call them dates," he said, a glint in his eye. "Meetings where two people share stories, laughs, maybe a walk under alien skies. It's about connection, finding someone whose fire matches yours." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "Sometimes, when it's right, it leads to something deeper, a dance of hearts, maybe even beneath the sheets, where words give way to something unspoken." His tone was careful, evocative but restrained, painting a picture of intimacy without crossing into the explicit. Seraphina's eyes flared, a mix of fascination and something unreadable, her fingers tightening on her gown. "A dance unspoken," she repeated, the words rolling off her tongue like a new flavor. "On Aurellia, bonds are forged for power, not this." Her voice held a trace of wonder, as if the concept was both alien and intoxicating. She stepped closer, her scent, spice, and starlight. filling the space between them. Your people seek such fleeting things. Why? John's smile was gentle, almost tender. Because fleeting doesn't mean empty, Your Majesty. It's the spark that lights a star. And I bet even a queen might wonder what that spark feels like. The throne room seemed to shrink, the guards and pillars fading as their words wove a fragile bridge. Seraphina's gaze lingered on him, her regal poise softened by a curiosity that felt dangerously close to desire. She tilted her head, her voice a whisper now, each word a challenge and an invitation. You speak of sparks, John Carter, but can a human's fire truly match an Aurelian's flame? The throne room's grandeur faded as Seraphina's words hung in the air, her golden eyes locked on John Carter with a mix of challenge and yearning. Her orange skin shimmered under the holographic starlight, her iridescent gown catching every flicker of the liquid metal pillars. The guards had retreated to the shadows, leaving only the hum of the citadel's energy and the weight of her question. Could a human's fire match an Aurelian's flame? John stood close, the spice and starlight scent of her presence stirring his senses, yet he held Raymond's lessons firm. Respect, patience, and a spark of something true. Seraphina's voice dropped to a whisper, almost vulnerable, a crack in her regal armor. You speak of sparks, of dances unspoken, she said, her fingers brushing the edge of her throne, as if grounding herself. Show me, John Carter. Show me this human connection you claim burns brighter than words. Her eyes searched his, not commanding but pleading, a queen stepping into uncharted territory. John's heart thudded, not with the bravado of youth, but with the weight of a moment that could redefine them both. He nodded, his gaze steady, warm with respect. Only if you're sure, Your Majesty, he said softly. This isn't a game. It's a bond. She stepped closer, her gown trailing like a comet's wake, her breath catching as the distance between them shrank. I am sure, she said, her voice trembling with a curiosity that bordered on hunger. I want to know what lies beyond our cold alliances. Show me what makes your kind chase the fleeting. Her hand hovered near his, not touching, a silent invitation. John took a slow breath, his voice low and earnest. It's about trust, Seraphina, about letting go, just for a moment, and letting someone see you, not the crown, but you. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers, a touch light as a whisper, but electric with intent. She stiffened, her golden eyes widening, unaccustomed to such intimacy in a world of calculated bonds. John paused, giving her space, his voice a gentle guide. We move together, he said, like a dance. You don't have to know the steps, just feel them. Her fingers curled around his, tentative at first, then firmer, as if anchoring herself to this new sensation. She nodded, a small, almost shy gesture, and John led her, not to the throne, but to a quieter alcove where the starlight softened and the pillar's hum became a distant lullaby. There, in the shadowed intimacy of the citadel, John guided her through a union that was as much spirit as it was body, a dance of souls, as he'd promised. He was respectful, his every movement deliberate, infused with a passion that spoke of connection, not conquest. Seraphina, at first unsure, her regal poise giving way to hesitation, followed his lead, her instincts awakening. His touch was a question, hers an answer, their rhythm building like a melody neither had heard but both knew by heart. Her orange skin flushed deeper, her breath quickening as she surrendered to the moment, her golden eyes alight with wonder, vulnerability, and a fire that matched his own. The experience was unlike anything she'd known, a revelation that transcended Aurelia's sterile alliances. Her laughter, soft and unguarded, mingled with gasps of discovery, each sound a note in their shared symphony. John's voice, low and reassuring, anchored her. This is us, he murmured, his hand tracing her arm. A gesture both tender and electric. Just us, no crowns, no worlds. Just this. Seraphina's response was instinctive, her movements growing bolder, her body answering his in a dance that felt ancient universal, and utterly new. As their connection deepened, the alcove seemed to glow, the starlight weaving around them like a cocoon. Seraphina's voice broke the silence, a breathless whisper against his ear. This is what you meant, she said, her words raw, stripped of regal distance. A fire that burns without consuming. Her fingers tightened on his, not in possession, but in need, a queen reduced to a woman who'd glimpsed something profound. John smiled, his touch lingering, respectful even in its intimacy. It's only the beginning, he said, his voice a promise, not a boast. She drew back slightly, her golden eyes searching his, no longer a queen judging a subject, but a woman seeing a man who'd unlocked a hidden part of her. "Stay with me," she said, her voice no longer a command but a plea, raw and heartfelt, as if the words had escaped before she could cage them. Her hand lingered on his, her orange skin warm against his, a bridge between their worlds. John met her gaze, his nod slow and certain. "I will," he said, his voice steady, carrying the weight of a vow. "As your advisor, your confidant, whatever you need me to be." From that moment, John became more than a visitor in the Sky Citadel. He stood at Seraphina's side, his counsel sought in matters of state, his presence a quiet strength in her private chambers. Their bond grew, not just in stolen moments of intimacy, but in shared laughter, late-night talks under Aurelia's violet skies, and a trust that defied the cold pragmatism of her world. He was her confidant, her lover, a human who'd ignited a spark that no throne could contain, and she, in turn, became his anchor, a queen whose heart he'd dared to reach. In the quiet of her private chambers, bathed in the soft glow of Aurelia's violet skies filtering through crystal windows, Seraphina paused before a mirrored wall, her orange skin catching the light like a fading ember. Her golden eyes traced the subtle changes in her form, a slight curve, a warmth that felt both foreign and alive. Her fingers trembled as they brushed her abdomen, a queen unaccustomed to uncertainty. She summoned the royal physicians, their sleek diagnostic drones humming as they scanned her in the Citadel's medical wing. The lead physician, an elder with silver-streaked hair, stared at the holographic readouts, her voice faltering. "Your Majesty," she said, "you are pregnant. A child grows within you." Seraphina's breath caught, her hand instinctively pressing against her skin as if to confirm the impossible. "Pregnant?" she whispered, her regal poise cracking under the weight of wonder and disbelief. "How can this be?" "Aurelians do not." She stopped, her gaze snapping to John Carter, who stood nearby, his presence a steady anchor in the sterile room. His eyes, warm and knowing, met hers, and a faint smile curved his lips, not triumphant but gentle, as if he'd expected this moment. "John," she said, her voice a mix of awe and urgency, "explain this. What has happened to me?" John stepped closer, his earth-made boots soft on the polished floor, his voice low and reassuring. "This, Seraphina, is how humans create life," he said, his hand hovering near hers, respectful of her space. "It's not just biology, it's love, connection, the spark we shared. That dance of ours that planted a seed, one that grows because we dare to feel." His words were simple but weighted, carrying the truth of a galaxy far removed from Aurelia's cold pragmatism. Seraphina's eyes widened, her fingers tightening against her gown as she processed the revelation, her mind racing to reconcile her world with his. She turned away, pacing toward a window where the twin suns cast long shadows across the jungle below. "On Aurellia," she said, her voice quieter now, almost confessional, "life is not born this way. Our reproduction is precise, controlled." She hesitated, her golden eyes clouding with a rare vulnerability. "Males are neutered at birth, their essence extracted and stored. Incubators craft our young in sterile chambers. There is no touch, no connection." Her words carried a trace of shame, as if speaking them aloud exposed a flaw in her world's perfection. John's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger passing through his steady gaze. But his voice remained calm, persuasive. "That's not right, Seraphina," he said, stepping to her side, close enough that she could feel his warmth, but not so close as to overwhelm. "Men deserve to feel whole, to share in creating life. And women, you deserve to know the fire of that bond, the way it changes you." He gestured to her, his hand open, inviting. "You felt it now? This child, our child, isn't just a miracle. It's proof that there's a better way." Seraphina's gaze dropped to her abdomen, her hand resting there again, protective and awed. "This fire," she murmured, echoing his word from their intimate moment. "I thought it was fleeting, a human whim. But it's real. It's alive inside me." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with a dawning realization, as if a veil had lifted from her understanding. She turned to him, her golden eyes searching his, no longer the untouchable queen, but a woman grappling with a truth that shook her world. "How do your people live with this? This vulnerability, this chaos of feeling?" John smiled, a soft, knowing curve that held years of Raymond's wisdom. "We don't just live with it," he said. "We chase it. It's messy, sure, but it's what makes us human. It's what makes life worth living. Not power, not control, but connection." He took a cautious step closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You're feeling it now, Seraphina. That's not weakness. That's strength, the kind no incubator can replicate." She stood silent, her fingers tracing the crystal window, the jungle's glow reflecting in her eyes. "Our way has kept Aurellia stable for centuries," she said, her voice steadier but still tinged with doubt. "Efficient. Safe." Yet, she turned to him, her expression softening, a faint smile breaking through. "I carry this child, and I feel alive in a way I never knew was possible. Your way, John, this human way, it's not cold. It's warm. It's true." Her words were a confession, a bridge between their worlds, and her hand reached for his, a tentative gesture that spoke louder than any decree. John clasped her hand, his touch firm but gentle, grounding her in the moment. "It's true because it's ours," he said, his voice rich with conviction. "And it could be true for all of Aurellia, if you choose to let it." His eyes held hers, not demanding but inviting, a partner rather than a petitioner. Seraphina's smile grew, a rare, unguarded light that seemed to brighten the room. "You challenge me, John Carter," she said, her voice laced with both amusement and respect. "You challenge everything I've known, and yet I find myself listening." Their hands remained joined, a silent vow as the physicians retreated, their drones powering down. Seraphina's gaze lingered on John, her awe giving way to a quiet resolve, as if the seed of their child had planted another. A vision of a world where connection, not control, shaped the future. She squeezed his hand, her orange skin warm against his, and for the first time, she spoke not as a queen, but as a woman awakened. "If this is truth," she said, "then I want to understand it. All of it. With you." In the Sky Citadel's council chamber, a vast oval of polished crystal overlooking Aurelia's glowing jungles, Seraphina stood before a holographic map of her world, its cities pulsing like stars. Her orange skin shimmered under the twin suns' light, her golden eyes alight with a fire that was no longer just regal, but visionary. John Carter stood at her side, his earth-made jacket a quiet contrast to her flowing gown, his presence steady yet unassuming. The air buzzed with the hum of floating data slates as advisors and nobles watched, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. Seraphina's pregnancy, a secret now whispered across the planet, had sparked questions no Aurelian had dared ask for centuries. She turned to John, her hand resting lightly on the map's edge, her voice resonant yet intimate, as if speaking to him alone. "You show me a truth I cannot unsee," she said, her gaze steady, carrying the weight of their shared bond. "This child we've created, this human way, it's more than a miracle. It's a challenge to everything Aurellia has been." Her fingers brushed her abdomen, a subtle gesture that silenced the room, her vulnerability a stark contrast to her usual command. I propose we rule together, John Carter, as queen and king. Your wisdom, ancient to us, could guide our people to a new path. John's eyes met hers, a flicker of surprise giving way to resolve. He stepped closer, his voice low but clear, carrying the conviction Raymond had instilled. That's an honor, Seraphina, he said, his tone respectful but firm. But I can't say yes without a condition. A murmur rippled through the advisors, their golden eyes narrowing. But Seraphina raised a hand, silencing them. Speak, she said, her lips curving into a faint, intrigued smile. What does the human who won my heart demand? He faced her squarely, his gaze unwavering. Reform Aurelia's birth policies, he said, in the neutering of men. Let them reclaim their bodies, their role in creating life. Let your people, men and women, choose love, connection, the way we've found together. His words were a quiet thunder, echoing in the chamber, each syllable a call to unravel centuries of tradition. You felt what it means to create life through love, he added, softer now, his hand gesturing to her. Don't deny that to your people. They deserve the warmth we've known, not the cold of incubators. Seraphina's breath caught, her fingers tightening on the map as she processed his words. The advisors whispered, some in shock, others in disapproval. But her gaze remained on John, searching, weighing. You asked me to dismantle a system that has defined us, she said, her voice measured but tinged with awe. Our stability, our order, it rests on control. What you propose is chaos. Yet her eyes betrayed a spark of recognition, a memory of their intimate dance, of the life growing within her. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. But I have felt your chaos, John. It is not destruction. It is creation. John nodded, his smile gentle but unyielding. Chaos can be beautiful, he said. It's not about tearing down your world. It's about giving it a heart. Let men stand whole. Let women feel what you're feeling now. Trust your people to find their own sparks. He reached out, his hand hovering near hers, not touching but close enough to feel her warmth. You're not just a queen, Seraphina. You're a visionary. Lead them to something better. The chamber fell silent, the advisors holding their breath as Seraphina turned back to the map, her golden eyes tracing the cities below. She stood taller, her gown shimmering like liquid starlight, and when she spoke, her voice rang with a clarity that stilled every doubt. John Carter speaks truth, she declared, her words cutting through the air like a blade. For too long, we have traded warmth for control, life for efficiency. No more. She faced the advisors, her presence commanding, unyielding. I decree a new dawn for Aurellia. Men will reclaim their birthright. Our people will learn the human way, love, connection, the fire that creates life. We will build a future not of incubators, but of hearts. A ripple of gasps and murmurs filled the room, but Seraphina's gaze returned to John, her smile radiant, a partner's rather than a ruler's. You will stand with me in this, she said, her voice softer now, a vow as much as a command. As king as guide, as the man who showed me what it means to live. John clasped her outstretched hand, his grip firm, his eyes alight with pride. I'm with you, he said, his voice steady, carrying the weight of a promise kept. Let's show Aurellia what humans and Aurelians can do together. From that day, John became more than Seraphina's consort. He was a beacon of change, walking the crystal streets of Aurelia's cities, teaching its people the value of genuine connection. In public forums, he spoke of love as a force stronger than any technology, his words laced with the humor and wisdom Raymond had gifted him. Men, long stripped of their roles, began to stand taller, their voices rising in council halls. Women, inspired by their queen's transformation, sought the warmth of bonds once deemed frivolous. John and Seraphina worked side by side, their partnership a living testament to the power of their shared vision, as Aurelia's cold traditions gave way to a society where every spark could ignite a star. Before the sky citadel, where Aurelia's crystal spires gleamed under violet skies, a statue rose on a plaza of luminescent moss, its surface catching the twin suns' light. It was not of John Carter, nor of Queen Seraphina, but of Raymond Carter, carved from translucent stone that shimmered like starlight. His likeness stood tall, one hand resting on a staff, his wise smile etched with knowing warmth, his deep-set eyes gazing across the galaxy as if seeing its secrets. The plaque at its base read, Raymond Carter, whose wisdom bridged worlds and kindled a new dawn. Crowds gathered daily, men and women of Aurellia touching the stone, whispering thanks for the freedom to love, a testament to a human whose teachings had reshaped their stars. In the celestial clinic, a chamber of soft light and humming holograms, John paced the polished floor, his boots echoing faintly. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, a calming rhythm that did little to still his racing heart. His thoughts drifted to Raymond, to those summer afternoons on New Terra's porch, the old man's gravelly voice weaving lessons of patience, wit, and quiet strength. John's fingers brushed the data slate in his pocket, a digital keepsake of Raymond's handwritten notes, scribbles about love, laughter, and seeing the heart behind the crown. A smile tugged at his lips, bittersweet, as he pictured his grandfather's sly grin, as if Raymond were here, nudging him with a knowing, "Told you, Johnny." A soft chime broke his reverie, and the clinic's doors slid open. A physician, her orange skin glowing faintly, stepped forward, her golden eyes bright with joy. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice warm, "the Queen is well, and your son is born, a healthy boy." John's breath caught, his chest tightening with a surge of pride and awe. The physician gestured to the inner chamber, where Seraphina lay, her black hair fanned across a cushioned platform, her orange skin radiant despite the fatigue. She cradled a small bundle, her golden eyes soft, no longer the untouchable queen, but a mother, her smile a quiet marvel. John approached, his steps slow, reverent, as if crossing a threshold between worlds. Seraphina looked up, her voice a tender whisper. "John, meet our son," she said, lifting the bundle slightly. "Raymond Carter, as we promised." The boy's tiny face, a blend of Aurelian glow and human warmth, stirred under the blanket, his eyes, golden like his mother's but flecked with earth-born hazel, blinking up at John. He took the child in his arms, his hands steady but trembling, the weight of the moment anchoring him to this new reality. "He's perfect," John murmured, his voice thick with emotion, his gaze locked on little Raymond's eyes, where he saw not just a child but a future, a galaxy of possibilities. Seraphina's hand found his, her fingers warm, grounding. "He carries your grandfather's name," she said, her voice laced with respect, "and his spirit. Without Raymond's wisdom, we would not be here." John nodded, his throat tight, a memory flashing of Raymond's words. Be someone worth finding. He'd found Seraphina, and together they'd found this, a life born of love, a legacy that spanned stars. The physician hovered nearby, adjusting a hologram that monitored the child's vitals. "He is strong," she said, a smile breaking her professional calm. "A child of two worlds, born of a bond that has changed us all." John glanced at Seraphina, their eyes meeting in a silent vow, her smile echoing the laugh that had once mocked him on Nexus 7, now transformed into a sound of shared joy. "He'll grow up in a world that knows love," John said, his voice firm, a promise to his son and to the planet they'd reshaped. "That's what your namesake taught me, little guy, to see the heart, no matter how far the stars." Seraphina squeezed his hand, her gaze shifting to the window, where the statue of Raymond stood visible in the distance, its stone catching the sun's glow. "Your grandfather's teachings live in him," she said, her voice soft but certain, "and in every Aurelian who now dares to feel. We built something new, John, because of you and him." John looked down at his son, the boy's tiny hand curling around his finger, and felt the weight of Raymond's legacy, not as a burden, but as a light, guiding him forward, binding past, present, and future in a single, unbreakable thread. John Carter fulfilled his promise, but the galaxy holds many Altheas, each with its own complexities. Share this story with someone who has an Althea in their life, and stay tuned for more tales like this. Until next time,